The Dallas Cowboys finished the 2022 regular season with a 12-5 record and beat the Buccaneers in the wildcard round of the playoffs before getting defeated by the San Francisco 49ers for the second consecutive season. It's hard to be disappointed when you win 12 games, but Cowboys fans are fed up. The last time this team made the conference championship game was back in 1995, and rival fan bases let Cowboys fans know this not just here and there, but all the time. And the Cowboys want to get back to the Super Bowl in the worst way, and in today's video, we're going to be previewing the 2023 Cowboys season. I know the title of today's video may come as a surprise to some people, but the Cowboys are serious contenders and they have it locked into back-to-back 12-win seasons. And there's only two teams that currently have back-to-back 12-win seasons. Those are the Dallas Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs. But how can the Cowboys go further this year? How can they take it the distance? Well, there's a lot to break down in today's video, and before we get started, only about 32% of people watching are subscribed, so if you enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel as it makes a big difference and only takes a second to do. Now let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing what must happen for the Cowboys to seriously compete this year, and it's addressing the elephant in the room immediately, which is Dak Prescott's turnovers. Dak led the league in interceptions last year with 15, or tied for leading the league as Davis Mills also had 15, but what was particularly worrisome about him doing so was he only played in 12 games. Dak finished the 2022 season 19th in passing attempts, and out of any starting quarterback in 2022, Dak had the highest interception percentage as he threw an interception on 3.8% of passing attempts last year, and that's out of all starting quarterbacks, so that includes Zach Wilson, Carson Wentz, Davis Mills, Colts Matt Ryan, and you get the point. And despite Dak having some very bad moments and very gross plays, it wasn't all bad with him, and he finished fourth in touchdown percentage last year. 5.8% of passes Dak threw resulted in a touchdown, which was only behind Tua, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. So it was a lot of take the good with the bad, and had Dak played a full 17-game season last year, he probably would have thrown for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, which is very doable for him this year. And they'll need it to replace the 12 rushing touchdowns Ezekiel Elliott had last year. I've been vocal about Zeke on the channel before, and Dallas nor anyone would want to pay the money he was due heading into 2023, especially for a player who averaged just 3.8 yards per carry last season, and a player who had 0 100-yard rushing games despite playing in 15 games last year. Malik Davis is entering his second year, and he had 38 carries in his rookie season, and he will certainly have his work cut out for him, but between him, Ronald Jones, and 7th-round running back Deuce Vaughn, collectively they can pick up what Zeke did last year. And this is, of course, without mentioning the lead running back in Tony Pollard, who had over 1,300 total yards last year, along with 12 total touchdowns. And despite Dak Prescott tying for the league lead in interceptions, you may be surprised to find out or realize that the Cowboys weren't top 3 or 4 in league turnovers. They finished 17th in turnovers, and granted there were only 4 games they had last year where they did not commit a turnover, they were 4-0 in those games, and technically 5-0 if you include the wild card game against Tampa, and they won by double digits in 4 of those 5 games. And starting off on the right track for them this year is going to be key, because they not only lost Zeke, who had the aforementioned 12 rushing touchdowns, but tight end Dalton Schultz, who finished second on the team in receiving yards, is now a Texan, and so is receiver Noah Brown, who finished third on the team in receiving yards. And Kellen Moore, the team's previous offensive coordinator, is now helping Justin Herbert and the Chargers as their new OC. And through a trade this offseason, the Cowboys added veteran receiver Brandon Cooks to help out the offense, and they also added corner Stephon Gilmore, which we will address later in the video. For Cooks specifically, I love the addition because this is a veteran who's been around for a long time yet still has a lot of good football in him. And Cooks was drafted at just 20 years old back in 2014, and he will turn 30 in September, and him being the number 2 to CeeDee Lamb is a great opportunity for him him because he could walk into a near 1,000-yard year at the position, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he did in fact go for 1,000 yards this year. And thinking out loud, assuming Dak plays all 17 games this year, he will probably throw for 43 or 4,400 yards at minimum, and if CD has 1,400 of those, the other 3,000 yards has to come from somewhere, and this is where Cooks comes into play. The Cowboys' #1 tight end is Jake Ferguson, who is a second-year player, and a guy who had 19 catches in his rookie season, meaning the path for Cooks to get 1,000 yards and to be a productive player this year is clear. And if Dak, Tony Pollard, and CD all stay healthy, this offense is going to put up big numbers, and individually, these guys are going to have big years. They put up 27 or more points as a team in 9 games last year, which included 8 straight games of 27 points or more, coming off of their Week 9 bye, and in those games they went 6-2, which included 3 40-plus point games, those of course coming against the Vikings, the Colts, and the Eagles. And over the past 2 years, the Cowboys have finished first in points per game in 2021 and fourth in 2022, even with Dak leading the NFL in interceptions and missing 5 games too. So for anybody that thinks Dallas is going to be a bad team this year, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, I'm not really sure where that comes from. They opened up their season in New York against the Giants, which was a team Dallas swept last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they started 1-0 this year too. They then play the Jets at home, then go to Arizona, then come home to play the Patriots. These games are going to be tough, don't get me wrong, but what's stopping the Cowboys from a 4-0 start? Their next 2 games are very tough, as they are 2 West Coast trips, with one being to San Francisco and the other being to LA to play the Chargers before their Week 7 bye. Generally speaking, the home team would be favored in those games, and the 49ers and Chargers rosters are 2 of the most complete rosters in the entire NFL. But so is the Cowboys. And given Dak is America's team's quarterback, he's obviously going to get a lot of attention, and that's the nature of the beast. But the Cowboys are in a great position defensively, and I think they have one of the best defensive coordinators in all of football in Dan Quinn. And I truly believe it's a matter of time until Dan becomes a head coach again, as guys love him and give absolutely everything for him each and every snap. The Cowboys finished 3rd in the NFL in sacks last year behind the Eagles and Chiefs, and it was obviously due in large part to the now 2-time first-team All-Pro, Micah Parsons. While Micah didn't have the 18.5 sacks Nick Bosa did, he was tied with Nick in leading the league in pressures with 90, and is a player you can build a defense around. And why Micah is so special as a player, and why everyone is as excited for his future as they are, he makes everyone's job around him easier. DeMarcus Lawrence may not be the double-digit sack player he was back in 2017 and 2018, but he's a very stout run defender, and he quietly had 55 pressures in 2022, which was his most since 2019. And having a player like Micah and even a Robin to his Batman in DeMarcus Lawrence allows a player like Dorrance Armstrong to have 8.5 sacks and a career-high 40 pressures like he did last year. And truly eliminating Micah Parsons from a game is almost impossible, and yes, he'll get his double teams and the protection sent his way because teams want absolutely nothing to do with him, but this defense isn't Micah Parsons and several average or below average NFL players. Trayvon Diggs is now a 2-time Pro Bowl corner and has 14 interceptions over the past 2 years. It should also be noted Trayvon improved as a tackler from 2021 to 2022, as he only missed 2 tackles in all of 22 after missing 7 in both his rookie and second season. Trayvon isn't the Revis Island shutdown corner from the late 2000s and early 2010s, where teams just don't look to throw to his side of the field, but he makes them pay a lot when they do. And after allowing over 1,000 yards in coverage in 2021, this is per PFF, he allowed 695 yards in 2022, while allowing a single reception more than he did in 21, meaning the yards per catch he allowed went down significantly. As mentioned earlier, the Cowboys traded for Stephon Gilmore this offseason, and considering they only gave up a 5th-round pick for him, I thought this was a great move as he is a low-risk, high-reward acquisition. Gilmore will probably play a year or two at the absolute most with the Cowboys, but anytime you can get a quality starting corner for a 5th round pick, that's a trade-off a lot of teams are willing to make, and especially one that's pushing for a Super Bowl. Stephon will turn 33 in September, so there is concern, of course, with the age and how will he regress over the course of the season, because at this point, you assume the fall-off is coming, but this goes back to the Cowboys' defensive mastermind in Dan Quinn. Dan will have the pass rush dialed in, and whether it's Micah, DeMarcus, or Osa Odigizua, there will almost always be somebody getting after the quarterback to rush a decision or get in his face and have the pass be thrown off or something to make the quarterback's life more difficult. Dallas finished 5th in the NFL in points per game allowed last year, and with how good their defensive unit is, I'd be very surprised if they don't finish in the top 10 for what will be the 3rd consecutive year. We discussed the run game earlier and how guys would have to pick up Ezekiel Elliott's role from last season, and while this was being mentioned, we kind of glanced over Tony Pollard and what we can expect from him this year. He ran for over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns last year and added an additional 371 yards receiving and finished the year with 1,378 total yards. I am normally under the belief to never pay a running back more than 2 years because there is far too much risk with the position and with the beatings these guys take, and forget year in and year out, but week in and week out. But if the Cowboys would have gave Pollard a 3-year extension with no money guaranteed after the first 2 years, I would have loved that for both Tony and the Cowboys. To date, Tony only has 510 career carries, and to compare to his predecessor, Ezekiel Elliott, Zeke had that by the middle of his 2nd season, which was already cut short due to the suspension he had back in 2017. But Tony having a 1,300 total yard year last year is something I would very much expect again this year, because he only touched the ball 232 times, which is not a lot for a running back. And have over 1,000 rushing yards on less than 200 carries is extremely impressive. And we mentioned the Cowboys' #1 goal heading into the year is to have Dak Prescott cut down on interceptions, and it's true, that is the #1 goal. But a big reason why I think this team is a serious contender in the NFC is they can beat you any way they want offensively. They can have a running back by committee approach and wear you down over the course of a game, and while this is happening, Dallas would be in the midst of an 11-play drive that takes up 6.5 minutes. Guess what's happening to their defense? Micah and the gang are getting re-energized and are coming back on the field fresh for every series. Dallas finished 9th as a team in rushing yards in 2022, and that was with a declining Ezekiel Elliott, who brought the team yards per carry down as he averaged just 3.8 yards per carry. The one big concern I have with this team is staying healthy up front, as veteran left tackle Tyron Smith will be 33 in December and has played in just 17 games over the past 3 years. Predicting any team to win a Super Bowl at the beginning of any season is very difficult, and while I'm not going on record and predicting the Cowboys win Super Bowl 58, they have a lot of pieces intact, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they did. I know Cowboys fans have been waiting for a very long time now, but the NFC Championship drought, you would like to think, is going to end sooner rather than later. This roster is extremely talented, and if everything goes right, the sky is the limit for the Cowboys. The team MVP, breakout player, team ceiling, and team floor are on the screen, and I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it helps tremendously and would be very much appreciated. And until the next team preview, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.